he decided to take over everything, is tying in loose ends years later.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I think, what was the last thing that we talked? Oh, well, bringing in the fact of the matter. So obviously, if you haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home,
spoilers.
Stop now.
Major spoilers.
And by the way, if you hadn't seen Hawkeye and you listened to our Hawkeye review, well, our bad. You got a bunch of spoilers. But with the fact of the matter is, because remember when they bought out, when the Netflix shows all got canceled, Kevin Feige said we have absolutely no plans right now of bringing in these characters. Mm-hmm. But look what they've done. They're starting to bring them in. They brought Kingpin into Hawkeye. Yeah. Now they brought in Matt Murdock.
And it was the same week too. The same week that Hawkeye episode came out is the week where No Way Home debuted. And yeah, so we got Hawkeye, we got Kingpin on Wednesday, and we got Matt Murdock on Thursday. And yeah, and it's so nicely done. It wasn't like fanfare and all that stuff. So okay, spoiler review. Anyone that watched Far From Home knows that at the end, Mysterio reveals that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So this picks up like almost like immediately after that, and Peter is like scrambling, and he's people are like, oh, murderer, yada yada. So they have a bit of a case, right, to be like, no, no one's gonna go to jail for this, And May has a friend, a lawyer friend, and the lawyer friend happens to be Matt Murdock. It cuts to the scene, and it's just sitting there with his shades and just looking dope. And then I love how, because the crowd is like mad at Peter, they threw in a rock,
a brick.
And a brick, and Matt just like caught it, and you could see also Peter was getting ready to catch it, but Matt caught it like that, and everyone's like, what?
And the best one, they didn't go into it. It's just a tease, and it's like, how did you do that? I'm a really good lawyer. Like, that was cool, and that was it. That was his whole scene. Yeah,
that was great. But yeah, so speaking of like tying up loose ends, I feel like this movie was, first of all, it was a love letter to the Spider-Man, cinematic journey so far, right? Like
right.
Toby, Andrew, Tom, right? But it was also
but freaking Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, but it was also like not just a love letter, but it was also meant to redeem some of the lesser qualities of those movies. Right. And that to me is what really made this movie special for me. I didn't realize just how much I was how much I loved the Spider-Man movies until watching this movie, because there was just so much just flooding back to me as you watch it. It's such a surreal feeling, and I feel like I got a similar thing when I was watching Endgame too, right? Like those callbacks in Endgame, and you're like, oh my god, I remember where I was when I watched that movie and I saw that scene. I remember that I just got that from Spider-Man, and it was like it was like feeding me all these emotions. Even something as simple as, and I'll handle that for the bit. I just want to say this part. Something as simple as Norman Osborn saying, I'm a bit of a scientist myself. I was like, I love it. I love it. All right, what are your thoughts?
I agree with you completely, because the one thing that I think inevitably happened is you started having, there's a subsection of fans who they'll argue over which one is the better Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. You'll have people who argue that Tobey Maguire is the one because we grew up with him. You'll have people like myself who I say Andrew is the better one to me because I think he's just the better actor, period. I think he's I think he's a generational talent.
I think of the three, he's the best actor.
He honestly is. And real quick digression from that is because I had just watched this right after I had watched Hacksaw Ridge for the very first time. Have you ever seen it?
I have. Yes.
And that's when I realized this. I mean, because I had just literally right before that, I guess I was on an Andrew Garfield binge, because before that I had just rewatched, I just popped in the Social Network because I wanted something in the background while, I'm on the phone in the kitchen falling asleep. And I got engulfed in it but it was based off of his acting. And I was like, man, Andrew Garfield is it. And the one thing that I love about this, I love what you said. It's a love letter to fans. And also, I think it's also an apology to fans for a minute. Look, we're sorry that Spider-Man 3 for Sam Raimi was just not up to par for some people. And man, we're so sorry that we tried to do too damn much for the second Andrew Garfield one, the second web one, and it just blew everything up and it caused us to, have to go in a different direction. And then obviously we love that you guys love the MCU. So it's a love letter overall. And the thing that I love about it is that it's funny enough to me that I feel like the breakout star of this particular one is Andrew Garfield because now he's starting to get where I think he is going to get a third Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of calls for that. I kind of don't want it. I think this was great.
No, I think it works perfectly because the Venom part, the Venom, Morbius, and then as I sent you that message where Madam Web is supposed to be played by Dakota Fanning.
Dakota Johnson.
Dakota Johnson, I'm sorry. Which one's Fanning?
Different actress.
Okay. But I feel like, because a lot of times what ends up happening is these movies just happens to be where the things just line up properly. And I feel like this is lining up perfectly for there to be a big movie where all of these characters can come together. And I feel like it's part of the web Sony Spider Venom and Morbius are tied into that one. It doesn't make sense why they wouldn't be.
So here's the only problem. So I don't believe Venom, like Tom Hardy's Venom, is from the MCU because they basically stated that they appeared in here. Yeah. So they came through the portal or whatever. But the problem with the idea that Mobius and Morbius or whatever, him, Venom, and all this, Yes, because of Michael Keaton in the trailer, who is Vulture in the MCU. Unless they're like he's a variant, unless they go that route. But then now you tie it into MCU. If you start using terms like variants and stuff, well, I guess you could say that. I
honestly feel what they did with this movie is they made it where kind of like the Flash, the Arrowverse on CW, where all right, look, these guys are taking place on this. Only thing I don't think they'll do is they'll oversaturate it like they've done with the Arrowverse because they have 50,000 different shows and this is
I've stopped watching.
Well, I feel like a lot of times their shows are like their seasons are designed just for those special mashups that they're going to inevitably happen in the year, the crossovers. And I'm just like, when you're trying to do that, when you're trying to build a world specifically for an episode like this, a crossover event, you start lose sight of what you're trying to do for your show.
The Flash season that preceded Crisis on Infinite Earths, I think, was exceptionally poor. But I thought Crisis on Infinite Earths was actually really good. As a good send off to Stephen Amell.
So the way I feel with the MCU is with this one is we're leaving it open where everything is possible, but at the same time, you have an explanation as to why everything, one, can be connected, but two, at the same time, is disconnected. So Venom doesn't take place in Tom Holland's Spider-Man universe. And right now, it's really ambiguous as to is it in Andrew Garfield's one, right? But
it could be.
It could be.
It could very easily be. Yeah.
And like you said, maybe Michael Keaton is a variant because the thing is, though, that they can leave that open because Jonah Jameson, they never explained if he's a variant. We just accept that he's the same actor, just a different character than the one that was in Sandman.
I think I would be. He has to be a variant. He cannot be the same. He definitely cannot be the same now because we know Toby knows a J. Jonah Jameson. He worked for him 20 years ago.
I wish I touched on that. I wish they had said something and I was like, huh. I guess he looks the same everywhere.
That would have been nice, easy.
Just a little tie-in for us to know that he's not, or be
I
like,
like that. I like
you know
that.
what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
well, I guess we can look alike or something like that. You know,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
something along those lines. I think would have been fine just to kind of touch on that. But I do feel because a lot of this, them bringing in these different Spider-Men, I do generally feel a lot of it was fan, not forced, but fan inspired because they were asking for it.
Mhm.
So I feel if Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man is being asked for, it can happen. I really think, but they have to be. But the thing that Andrew Garfield has to tell them is like, look, we got to do it right.
It has to be a strong script.
Do not do too much.
Yeah.
Do not do too much like you did before, because the thing is, though, there's a lot of left open for him. One, people want to know about the media or the fallout after Gwen, and then I feel like there could also be the whole. This is the more depressing Spider-Man, right? In the sense that since you could kind of feel like he has the most loss than the other ones because he lost the love of his life. And I think the greatest part about the Amazing Spider-Man, and I always tell people all this time, is that series is the chemistry between Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield was so damn good that it was genuinely the love story that made that movie so good for me. Because there was a lot going wrong with the that happened in the second one. First of all, the way that they had Electro like, book, and they rectified that in this one. Which, by the way, that introduction of Jamie Foxx was hilarious. Like, I was just gonna act like I'm not naked here. But the thing with the second movie that I would tell you right now is if you watch that movie and you only pay attention to their love part, it's a good movie because their acting is amazing. So I do feel like there is going to be a good amount of fanfare for the Amazing Spider-Man 2, and you can tell he wants to do it. You could tell he would love to come back to that character. Okay, and there could be from you know, because there's back ramifications to these worlds. Yeah, based off of what just happened here, because certain characters that were supposed to die didn't die, so there's going to be ramifications. Dr. Octavius didn't die. Yeah, Green Goblin didn't die. Neither did Electro and the Lizard. So you know.
So let's before we get off of Spider-Man, let's quickly, because we spent a lot of time on Andrew Garfield. Let's quickly touch on some other characters or some other actors. Willem Dafoe. What were your thoughts?
Man, he didn't miss a beat. Yeah, he didn't miss a beat. And you could tell he was having fun. And when an actor has fun with the role, you have fun with watching him do that role. He had fun with that role. He did a great job. To me, out of all the villains, he was the best one.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, I was like very like giddy about Alfred Molina because he was the first one that comes through, and that whole scene. I thought Alfred Molina also like just slipped right into the role. Yeah, like he never left. But man, once Willem Dafoe is like truly in the movie, it didn't stop. He was so good. He felt like this menacing force that's leading the Sinister Five. And I really like that they brought in a villain from each of the movies. They didn't leave any movie out. They weren't like, oh, we don't like Amazing Spider-Man 2, so we're going to leave out someone. Or we don't like Spider-Man 3, so no, they brought in someone from every single one. Even if the Lizard didn't have that much to do, or Sandman didn't have that much to do.
You know what? You just made me realize that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. They brought a villain from every single movie.
Yeah, so even if Sandman and the Lizard didn't have much to do, there's still like these movies exist. We're not going to act like they don't exist. Yeah. What are your thoughts? Quick thoughts on Alfred Molina?
Like you said, stepped right into it. I liked it. I really, when I think about it more and more, I'm like, I really do like that he tied in more into the anger and because this guy never had that change of heart where he sacrifices himself for Spider-Man. He never had that, so he was still building up on that anger. And I think they did a great job of making sure that kept going, that showing. Because remember, even Spider-Man, Spider-1 was like, oh, that's why he's always unhappy.
Oh, you mean the thing on his neck?
Yeah. It was like, I love that they did that. I love that. That he go into anger. Jamie Foxx.
Well, no, let's finish Tobey Maguire's trilogy. So Tobey.
Oh, okay, but not so we're talking about Sandman.
Sandman. Yes, he didn't do it. So we could skip.
It was cool. He was cool.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. What's the actor's name?
Oh God. I forgot. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I forgot his name, but he was the one that I felt most like
Thomas Hayden Church.
Hayden Church, yes, Thomas Hayden Church. He was the one I felt most like they were filming the scenes elsewhere, like almost like they're like, hey, I know you're quarantined somewhere, just say something, and they put it like he felt the least involved.
Oh, is that what happened in behind the scenes? He couldn't do it because he was quarantined.
No, I don't know, but I'm saying that's what it felt like. Same thing with the lizard, to be honest.
Yeah.
Reese
like
Ifans, I think. Yeah, it felt like he wasn't there. But so let's go with Tobey real quick before we move on to Andrew's.
Oh yeah.
So I like Tobey Maguire in this movie. I think he definitely got the most reaction from the fans when he came through.
Of course. He set it off, man.
This felt like a different Peter, and you know what? It felt like a more grown-up Peter. Like he's lived, he's seen things. He thankfully didn't go through the tragedy that Andrew Garfield's Peter went through, but he was more seasoned. And I love the line where Andrew is like, "So, do you have a suit, or are you gonna come dressed as a youth minister?"
That one made me.
Yeah, he had those vibes, those youth minister vibes or whatever. He felt different from his Spider-Man that we knew from the past, but I liked it. It also seems real.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, all three Spider-Men were amazing to me. I love them all, so there's gonna be no bad reviews on either of them. I would say with Tobey Maguire's, like you said, it was seasoned. He felt like he was the understandably and rightfully so the veteran out of all of them, because he was a lot older. I mean, he's 20 years older now, and I think the best part about his character was that he was basically the mentor for both of them.
Yes.
Even though they were both the mentor for Tom Holland's character, I feel like he was the main mentor for all of them because he had been through so much already. He was a grown-up, whereas these other two were technically still kids, although we know Andrew Garfield is our age, but he was still technically in that world. He's still a kid. And I think he did a great job, man. I'm really happy that Tobey Maguire is not one of those actors that tries to move away from the role that made him. And
I particularly enjoyed when Tom is like so mad and he's about to kill Norman. Again, this is a spoiler talk, so if everyone wants to see that, he's about to kill Norman, and Tobey stops him, and he doesn't say anything. I think he might have said something, but basically, like, looked at him like don't do this, so you can't come back from this. Stuff. And then when Norman stabbed him, I was like, no. I actually said no. I'm not one of those people who like talks in the movie theater, but I was like, no. But he survived. So he's like, oh, I've been stabbed before, which is a callback. I liked Tobey in the role. Okay, and we're gonna skip Lizard because we already just talked about him. It was like barely in there. It was just filling out space, to be honest.
I just feel like they did enough with him.
Yeah.
For him to be
I think there were a lot of characters anyway, so like you can't really touch on everyone.
That's a perfect way for you to say that, because when we talk about Eternals, I'm going to talk about something like that too.
Okay.
Perfect.
Eternals is going to be a short conversation now.
Yeah, Lizard was there. He was cool. I think Jamie Foxx's Electro, though, he served as the great. They let Jamie be Jamie. They let Jamie be Jamie with his character. Let him be funny. Let him be the smooth guy that he really is. I think they did a good job with letting Jamie Foxx be Jamie Foxx.
I think that might actually be my problem with it. I think it was too much Jamie being Jamie.
It was a different character, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was very different.
Very different. But they touched on that. Remember, he said, "I came out here looking all different."
I actually feel different. And the energy here gives him orange lightning yellow lightning as opposed to blue. Is it an improvement over the first time we saw him? For sure, 100%. But then there was a little too much Jamie riffing, you know. I was like, okay, yes, Jamie, you're here. So, okay, so
actually, that's a good point because it did kind of seem like he was trying to notice me a little bit, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Andrew Garfield. Oh, we've talked ad nauseum about him, so we can skip.
We don't have to skip, but I could just say, honestly, out of this, it's so crazy that a guy who was already established as a character was the breakout star of the movie.
Oh, before we leave Andrew Garfield, the scene, bro, when Mary Jane is falling, and then he goes and catches her, and then he's like, "Are you okay?" And then like he's like almost like tearing up, like because it's like reminding him of the Gwen thing, and then she was like, "Are you okay?" You know, and then it's like.
They did, honestly, this movie, it's too early for me to call it on my list just yet. But man, it had so many in-game kind of feel. It really did. This felt like a saga. This felt like the conclusion of a great, which technically it is. It's the conclusion, or at least it's the satisfactory, like kind of somewhat ending for eight movie, whatever, you know, the trilogy, the you know what I'm saying? So it's just like, this is the end of a saga. This is the conclusion of a saga.
And the thing about it too is that where Endgame was kind of like leading to this, like you knew that, hey, we're doing, this is the plan, right? This is our 10-year plan, or whatever.
Right.
This kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like when Sony did this trilogy, and they moved them from Tobey Maguire and did plan another trilogy, but then scrapped this 2023. They weren't planning like, okay, at a certain point we're gonna bring them all together. This kind of came out of nowhere, but it was done so well and so seamlessly. That third act is probably my favorite third act of any Marvel movie, and this is including Endgame. It was so grounded. Like everything that happened after Endgame, it's just so. I just loved it so much.
Do you think you're being a Spider-Man homer though?
Probably.
I agree with you, because that one scene where you know they're both, where they look up and you see both the Spider-Man. That's honestly.
Or when all three jump down onto the scaffolding and they all jump down with their own signature pose.
I'm over here I was about to turn to Cass, my wife, and I was like, I think I came. You know, it's just like it's one of those scenes that are just like freaking like phenomenal, man.
Yeah, they each do their signature landing pose. It was so good. Okay, Tom Holland, real quick. I know you've never really been a big fan of him as Spidey. Okay. What are your thoughts? Right?
I've been a fan of his. I never thought of him as my favorite Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. But even though Andrew Garfield was the breakout star, his acting made sure that this movie was about him.
Yes.
Tom Holland, I'm gonna tell you, if there was like a actor performance kind of for just specifically for Marvel movies every year, because you know they pop out with like 30 different movies every year anyways, Tom Holland would surefire get it, man. Best actor in an MCU movie for, honestly, I think he might have the best performance of any MCU movie.
And you know, thankfully I've seen Homecoming and Far From Home again recently, and you can definitely see an improvement. Even from his first appearance in Civil War, you can definitely see he's improving as an actor. And that it also helps that he's doing other like projects where he's a great actor. Having to be more like dramatic and stuff. He's improving as an actor, and this movie just like really brought it home. I agree with you completely. The death scene, the Aunt May death scene, where she gets hit and we're like, oh, that's that, and then she like gets up and she's walking, but it's like, but she's like dying and she doesn't even realize it yet.
I knew it was like, it happened because I could tell that she was going into shock.
Yeah, so, and she's not the whole thing. Oh my god,
Marissa Tomei was so good in this movie.
Yeah, she's an Oscar winner.
She is an Oscar winner. It was great, honestly, man. I tell you right now, the one thing that I love about this movie, and it ties back to Tom Holland, is that everybody was passionate.
Yes.
In this movie,
Tom Holland saved it. Huh? Tom Holland saved it because you know there was supposed to be like a Disney and Sony split, and they couldn't come to the table or whatever. And Tom Holland made like a big like Twitter campaign to like keep everything together. Tom Holland saved it.
That's the thing though. Like, basically, you had fans playing their favorite character. Honestly, like, and man, I don't be shocked if this movie eventually, if I go ahead and cement. I don't know if I can cement it over Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is still my favorite, but it's like I tell people, there are movies that you love because you just love watching them, and then movies that you know are great. I can probably say that this one might be the greatest MCU movie, but it doesn't necessarily have to be my favorite MCU movie, but it can be the greatest MCU movie.
As far as like
acting,
what they achieved and what they would, I can definitely see that. It was top tier for sure. I can't wait till it's on Disney Plus.
10-star movie, but then again, Winter Soldier is a 10-star movie to me too. So.
The top tier.
All right.